Good day everyone. Today we're going to start paragraph 7.4, which is named Quadratic Equations, which is actually also the name of this whole chapter. So this paragraph is named after the chapter, which I think means that this one is going to be rather important, right? Well, it is. We're going to take a look at how we can solve quadratic equations in a different way than that we were taught in chapter 5. First of all, hopefully you still remember this, right? The product sum method is the small summary of how it works. You will find that the product sum method is going to be one of the most important things that we're going to talk about in this paragraph as well. So if you find this still difficult, take a look at chapter 7.3 again, theory A and B, and practice this a bit, please. Okay? Because we're going to need it today. But before I'm going to start talking about the product sum method again, I want to answer this question. Julia has multiplied two numbers. The result is 0. What can you say about these numbers? Think about this for a moment, right? We have two numbers, we multiply with each other. What can the value of those numbers be? Well, if you think about this carefully, that can only mean one or maybe two things. One or both of them should be 0. There is no other possibility for this to happen. One of those numbers must be 0 or both of them should be 0. You see that I say or both in a smaller font than the rest of the sentence because I think one is enough, and we'll see that we're going to work with one of them, that it should be 0, because we're going to answer questions like this in a bit. How are we going to do that? Well, say you multiply two factors and the result is 0. Well, you can call the first factor A, that's the first thing that you're going to multiply, and the second thing you can call, for example, B. Now there is one rule that we can use, and that's the rule that we just found out about in the previous slides, that from A times B is 0, it must follow that A is 0 and or B is 0. And we're going to use or. You can use or, and or is okay, but you're going to say A is 0 or B is 0, okay? They can also both be 0. So it must be a product, right? This is only true when it is a product, when we do things times each other, and the result must be equal to 0. How can this help us out when solving quadratic equations? Well, take a look at something like this, for example. Now you see that sometimes it's very nice when we have an equation with something inside of brackets like this. Because when we now know this rule of product equals 0, we can now say, hey, but this is a product. It's the first thing inside of brackets, x minus 4, times, because you could say there's a times sign here, right? X plus 3 equals 0. So because we now know this, hey, we know either A must be 0 or B must be 0. So x minus 4 must be 0, right, because that's A, or x plus 3 is 0. And this we know how to solve, right? Chapter 3, solving linear equations, we use the balance method here. We say plus 4 to the left, then plus 4 to the right, and minus 3 to the left, then minus 3 to the right hand side. So x is 4 or x is minus 3. Okay, so this gives us a way to now solve quadratic equations that are in this form. However, you will find that we don't always have equations that are in this form. But luckily, because of the product sum method, we can now also rearrange terms like this into something inside of brackets, right? Because we want to do that, because here we cannot say what x is in one go. Why not? Well, because this is not a product. We can try this by trial and error, but it can take a long time, certainly when these equations are going to be a bit more elaborated, instead of those with only x squared minus x minus 20. If you're going to solve this paragraph, I would like you to answer those two questions. Is it equal to 0? Is something on the left-hand side equal to 0? In this case it is, right? So we can check that box. But it is not a product yet. It's not something times something. And that's where we're going to use the product sum method from paragraph 7.3. Remember, what we're going to do is ask ourselves this question. When is the sum of this thing minus 1? Because you could say there's a 1 here. And the product minus 20. You could make a table out of this, right? You make the table of minus 20, or you do this mentally. I think if you practice enough, maybe you can already do it mentally right now. I think the only acceptable answer here is plus 4 and minus 5. Plus 4 minus 5 gives me minus 1, and plus 4 times minus 5 gives me minus 20. Hey, and now I find that this is a product. Right? Something times something equals 0. So now I can say, well, this is A, so this must be 0, times this we call B, this must be 0. And this again is a linear equation that you can solve, right? This is going to be either x is minus 4 or x is 5. Okay, let's try one again. Let's say I have something like this. Well, is it equal to 0? Yes. Is it a product? No. But here we don't have to use the product sum methods. Here we're going to use the method that we have taken a look at in paragraph 7.2. Remember when we said that we're going to search for common factors. Why are we going to do that here? Well, let's first indicate what are the common factors here. I think that's going to be 3a. So if you now find that the common factors are 3a, right? There's 3a in this thing. This is 3 times a times a. This is 3 times 3 times. This is 3 times a times a. This is 3 times. Okay, one time again. This time correct. 3 times a, and 3 times a. I think I'm saying this correctly right now. So what I'm left with in the first thing is a, and what I'm left with in the second term is 3. Hey, this is also a product. Now this thing in front of the brackets is going to be a factor. This is going to be my a, you could say in a times b equals 0. And the thing inside of brackets is going to be my b. So here I can say, well, 3a equals 0. Or a plus 3 equals 0. Remember when we found something like this, there's something in front of my a, that means that we divide left and right by what's in front. Well, because we have 0 on the right hand side, 0 divided by 3 just gives me 0, right? So this is going to be a is 0 or a is minus 3. So there are multiple ways that we can now use this a times b equals 0, the product is 0 rule. Sometimes you have to use putting the common factor outside of the brackets, which we have taken a look at 7.2, and sometimes we have to use the product sum method, which we discussed in 7.3. Okay, I think I will leave it with that for this video. In the last video we'll take a look at theory C, where sometimes the equation can be a little harder, right? But first practice exercises like this, then we're going to take a look at theory C.